So today there was an incredible deal announced that Square, US-based Square, was acquiring ASX-listed Afterpay for $39 billion. In this video, I'm going to be talking about what this means for the innovation space in Australia. Okay, so I'm sure if you're in this area and you're watching this video, it's likely that you've seen the headlines that Afterpay has just been acquired today. And when I saw the announcement come out through the AFR this morning, there were so many things that went off in my head, thinking about this deal and the importance of it for basically for our whole ecosystem. And to give you the full context of what this means and what Afterpay has meant, to us as innovators or to you guys as investors, I think it's really important to understand the difference it makes when a company like that creates the success they do and the wealth they create in the actual process, not only for the founders, which is obviously the most reported part, but for the investors that have participated right from the start when they actually IPO'd. So think about this. So for example, right, one of the most well-known success stories for Australia is obviously Atlassian. Now, Atlassian just crossed the $80 billion mark. And what was interesting for them is that what people forget is when Excel took their initial stake in them in 2010, that was the first signal which showed that US VCs had an interest in Australian tech companies. And what was really interesting, if you notice in the years following, more and more US VCs started coming out to Australia. They started looking at Australian opportunities. And that was the transaction that set it off. And what I find interesting about deals like this is they're typically indicators for what's about to come next. And they set the benchmark. So in 2010, it was, I said, Excel putting money into Atlassian, and they didn't need to raise the money at the time, but they did. And it said it was a signal for the entire market and the entire innovation ecosystem. And then from there, the US VCs started coming out to it. And now it's common. Now it says it's just so normal. Now there's US VC funds setting up here, or Asian VC funds that are looking for opportunities in Australia as well. And then the other thing that I started to notice, and if you think about going back into the history of this space and how it's grown and how it's evolved and the key moments that made that difference, the next one that most people probably won't remember was when Freelancer went to IPO. So there was this period between sort of like 2008 to 2012 where everything was just talking about commodities. I remember because I started Wholesale Investor in 2008 and there was almost no attention on this space. For that first 4 to 5 years, all you would see in the media was how there was no funding for startups. That is all you would see. And what people didn't realize was that, what they were referring to was VCs. But actually, there was a lot of money being invested into early stage companies via high net worths and via family offices and via basically the industry that was helping to build it, right? So whether it be from legal, whether it be from, basically industry professionals. But in 2013, 2014, when Matt Barry listed Freelancer on the Australian Stock Exchange, he basically took a growth technology company, placed a higher value, I think they listed around about the sort of $300 million mark, and at that stage, I don't think they were actually profitable. So it set a reference and it set a benchmark for what was possible for listing on the ASX. Then what followed after that was a lot of the brokers out of Perth were starting to look for backdoor listing opportunities for tech companies into what were previously mining shells. So in that boom between 2008 to 2012, there was a lot of ASX listed companies created. And when the mining sector was started to have a hard time at that period, effectively those shells were looking for new vehicles to go into it to actually basically drive growth. So they started looking for tech companies to list into these shells. And that was basically what started the process of the ASX becoming almost listed venture capital. And it's sort of still continued that way. And for me, I found it really interesting that when you watch these sort of transitions and these trends and themes take place, it's fascinating to watch everything that unfolds after it. And you see it, so those mining winnings all of a sudden were going in looking for tech companies to find a home. The other area that was interesting is whenever life science companies win, typically what you find is that they then reinvest back into the ecosystem. So when Atlassian listed in the US, I said it created a lot of millionaires out of the actual process. What is beautiful is you've gone on to see those guys go and create family offices, they've created VC arms, they've gone and invested into other VCs. They're obviously part of the original investments into the two of the most important sort of VCs in the Australian ecosystem. And that all got created from that initial process. So wins like this, successes like this are actually transformational for this. Because if you think about it, I've read some report where $1.6 billion was invested from VCs last year. This was a $40 billion acquisition, right? The amount of money that will be reinvested back into the ecosystem post this, most people won't even be thinking of. If you think about it like this, what was different about Afterpay, and this is why I think that most people are sleeping on how important Afterpay is to the whole innovation, the whole investment ecosystem, is because not only did it create a whole bunch of other buy now, pay later opportunities, which have also done very well, also raised substantial capital, also had successful listings and have been able to grow quite aggressively. It created a whole new category around that. And with that new category, additional wealth was created. What is beautiful about this ecosystem is when money gets created, it also gets reinvested, right? It gets reinvested back into the next generation of companies coming forward. So in the Afterpay story, you're literally looking at thousands of millionaires that have been created, probably tens of thousands in the six-figure amount of wealth has been created for individuals, for entities, for people that participated in that company and participated in that rise. And of course, even though it was a script acquisition, that will still continue to grow. But the value that got created in that process, the venture investment groups that will be created from the wealth that was created. WiseTech Global was another one. When they listed, plenty of the staff that invested into that company all the way through, then someone went and set up VC arms, or they just started investing back into other tech companies, or they started setting up their own tech companies and started investing into it. Right? I said this creates more of a knock-on effect than what people will ever think about. So for me, seeing this announcement today, and I said watching the Afterpay story, I said knowing that retail investors got the opportunity, obviously institutional investors made a lot of money in the process, but they would have had tens of thousands of investors that have made a lot of money throughout their journey and throughout the different life cycles of that business, right sort of from 2015. This is an incredible story for the entire Australian ecosystem that will have, as I said, knock-on effects for the next 5 to 10 years because of that wealth. It goes far beyond what the VC funds can actually invest into the companies because the money goes into the hands of multiple people, and those multiple people then go and reinvest it back into the ecosystem. So the next generation of founders coming through will benefit massively from the work that the founders of Afterpay and all the team that have done in building that business. So what an incredible success story, what an incredible announcement. I'm super happy for them as founders. And as I said, when we have success stories like that in the ecosystem, absolutely everyone benefits going forward.